Welcome back to Buckets WNBA edition. I am your host, Jim Turvey. We are joined on this Family Friday by a repeat, returning, conquering guest. It's our first repeat in the rotation. We're gonna start. We'll have a couple more surprise guests here and there, but we're gonna start to keep the rotation as is. Some of the folks you've gotten to hear from these past Fridays as the season has opened up. We're bringing back the person we had on for the first two episodes. You know what that means. Our Bet She Wins buddy, it's Calvin Wetzel. Calvin, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well. I'm always down to hop on and get some buckets with you, Jim. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely love it. We got kind of a lighter Friday slate. We got two games. We'll talk through those games, of course. We got plenty of best bets for you. We're also going to do kind of a little bit like a fun thing. I think it might be a little bit actionable, especially if you are someone who tails either me or Calvin often. You might either relate to what we're going to do, or you might like use it as future reference. So I'll leave that as a tease. That's coming in the second half here. But obviously we'll do best bets first. But just wanted to remind folks that you can find our projections, our WNBA projections, in the Action Network app. So if you're looking for an edge betting WNBA sides, totals, or player props, Action Pro projections are the perfect tool for your toolbox this season. If you aren't an Action Pro subscriber yet, you can get $20 off an annual subscription right now. Just visit actionnetwork.com/pro to sign up. That's $20 off the annual subscription price at actionnetwork.com/pro. So with that being said, let's lay the scene for this Friday slate. Two games, like I said. A lot of line movement on both of these. So I'm reading these. I'm going to read these spreads and totals as they are now. It might be different as you're listening. It might have gone either way. We'll talk through it all. But we've got Chicago at Atlanta. Atlanta laying 12 points there. That opened, I think, like 8.5 around there. The total is 158. That's down notably as well from open, I think, 3 or 4 points there. We've got the Dallas Wings at the Las Vegas Aces. The Aces are laying 5. They opened up minus 10.5. Now, a good chunk of that is some A'ja Wilson news that we'll talk about. But I think a decent chunk of that is some maybe Aces skepticism that we'll talk through as well. The total there is ticked up a couple points. It's sitting at 168.5. So, Calvin, we'll do the full breakdown of these game by game. But just list your best bets for me to start, and then we'll dig into them as we go.
Yeah, to start with, I think you got to find ways to bet on the Wings offense. We've already seen, like you said, the spread has moved towards them. The total has moved up. And a lot of that was with the A'ja Wilson news that she's doubtful. But even before that news came out, anyone who saw the game and saw her not return in the fourth quarter probably knew that was coming after her last game. So I still don't think that this line is where it's going to close or where it should close, even though it's moved a lot. In terms of the Dallas side and the total, so really, if you want to just put those together, like I said, team total, just bet on the Wings offense. I would never want to bet on the Wings defense in any form. We always call them Alice, no D Dallas, but the offense, I think you can bet on, especially with Paige Bueckers back in the fold now, and against an Aces team who just isn't very good on defense, just flat out has not looked good on defense. And A'ja Wilson, one of the few players who is an exception to that, again, doubtful and may not be on the court. So you have two bad defenses, and you have a Dallas team who now is coming on the road against a team that the market, an Aces team that the market just continues to, I think, overrate based on kind of who they have been in the last few years. We're going to talk more about that too in our second half. that you dangled a little bit, but so I think you got to bet on the Wings offense. So team total over 81.5 right as we record is my favorite way to bet it. But I think it should be mid 80s. Honestly, you could even go up a little bit more than that.
Yeah, let's talk through this game to start. So, like I said, it was opened Aces big favorite. They took some money, and you couldn't tell if it was A'ja or if it was market skepticism of the Aces who have looked. They're sitting at 4-4. They just lost to the Valkyries. Most recently, what's their most recent loss? It was
Sparks.
To the Sparks. Yeah, lost to Sparks as well. Gave up a ton of points. Then when we saw A'ja out, I mean, this has moved 5.5 points. That's more than even A'ja Wilson is worth. MVP level player, probably worth about 4 points to spread. For her, I do think that you're right to target some Dallas overs here. So I'll say my best bets for this game. I'm on Dallas. I'm on this game's over in general. So it's at 168.5 right now. Post it in the app at 166.5. So you might already be on that. Don't double hit it. Double check that before you you bet it again that you didn't get in on that first number. I'd play this over 168.5. I talked about how if Asia's out, I'm going to really love this play. The on-off stuff, we're talking small sample here, but with Asia off the court, this defense. So, let's start with Asia on the court, because this defense hasn't been great in general. Even with her on the court, they're at 99.8 points per 100 possessions. I texted you earlier today, what's the average defense at this year? That's basically right around average. 99.2 is the average. So they're even a tiny bit worse than average defensively this season with Asia on the court. Here's the kicker. With her off the court, their defensive rating drops to 125.6. And that's like comically worst by far all time. Like, again, we are dealing with small sample because we're early in the season, excuse me, and Asia plays a lot of minutes. So there's not a whole lot of minutes. She hasn't been out there. But to be honest, the offense is semi-stabilized. I think there's probably some noise to that as well about who's coming into the game, what's the game script when Asia is out, all of those things. But the point remains, this is the leading, one of the leading defenders in the league. She's leading the league in steals plus blocks per game right now. Very, very good defender on a very, very shaky defense. We always know big defense matters a lot too. Dallas in general, like we said, I want no part of, the defensive side of Dallas. So this is even better. We get to play, the Alice with no D, like you said, third worst defensive rating, third most points per game allowed. I think this total, honestly, this is one of those where like it's going to be tough for the market to kind of catch up to where I'm picturing this. I would have it in the 170s, like kind of mid 170s, to be honest. I think Dallas's defense, even more so, is going to be sus. And if the Aces, we'll talk through a couple of player prop angles with Asia out potentially. I think there's some players who can step up and still score, but defensively, I think it's going to be a disaster. Paige Bueckers, incredible first game back. She's back now, so the Wings have most of their weapons. They're without Ty Harris. They're going to be out with her. I believe, is it all season that she got ruled out?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, so Ty Harris will be out all season. But if anything, I think she's probably a little bit more known for her defense, maybe some three-point shooting. But a lot to love here from the over. Is there anything else? There's a couple of potential prop angles I wanted to talk through on this game. But is there anything else with this game before you want to talk through maybe a couple prop looks?
Yeah, I do have a prop I want to talk about, but before we get to that, the total is interesting because I'm right there with you. I think it should be in the 170s, and it actually did creep up into the 170s. I think you got it in the Action app at 166.5, right? I grabbed it with you at 167 or 167.5, but it got up into the 170s. Then Asia was out. 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, like you said, on-off numbers are crazy. But obviously also the leading scorer on the team and leading scorer in the league last year, one of the leading scorers in the league this year, and the market reacted to that side of her game more than the other side, which it may or may not be, accurate. Like, she is obviously extremely impactful on both ends, but this line is just too low either way. Like, with or without her, it doesn't matter. This line should not be below 170, regardless of whether she's on the court or not, to me. So I think we'll see by the time you listen to this if it bounced back. But for now, I think you have a little opportunity to buy back in if you missed it. If you saw, this got into the 170s, I couldn't tell that 166.5 that you posted on Action. Well, now it's creeping back down. So you might have another opportunity. So kind of keep an eye on the line movement on this in particular. Yeah,
one other thing, as this line gets closer and closer, without Asia, it's more and more likely to be a close game and not a blowout. We know the blowouts are typically, you want to skew a little bit towards the under. You get some of those bench players at the end, and it can kind of stall out a potential over. But the spread's only 5 right now, so I think we'll get it. And if anything, I think you and I both would lean towards the Dallas side of that spread.
Still,
so yeah, I think it should be a pretty close game. I think it should be a very high scoring game.
You also have 2 of the top 4 teams in the league in pace in this one.
Yeah, that's an excellent one. Actually, if you can stall for 1 second, I meant to look this up. I wanted to look up on our favorite PBP stats there. I wanted to look up what the pace differential was with Asia on the court versus off the court. So
while you're pulling it up, should I get into my player prop?
Let's do it.
Yeah, so this one is going to sound very counterintuitive to everything we just talked about because it's a Dallas Wings under, which I just recommended on betting on their offense. But I do think that this one actually works kind of well, and if you could find some reverse correlation on a certain book, then you can maybe put this together with some Wings overs. But Paige Bueckers under 1.5 threes. This is the one for those in the Bet She Wins Discord I was going to post, and then it moved. it was at plus money when it opened. It was at like plus 114. I was getting ready to post it at minus 103, and then it shot down to minus 135. I think it's like minus 137, minus 140 now. So it's starting to get iffy. I would have the true odds of this without accounting for any of the small sample stuff I'm about to get into in a second. I would have the true odds at like minus 150. So I still think there's like a little bit of a room, but more of a lean now, especially in a game where we think that the Wings offense is going to be clicking. But when you look at the on-off stuff, again, small sample, so this may or may not mean anything, but if it does mean anything, it only helps us. Worst case scenario, it's still a lean. The Aces 3-point rate allowed is a lot higher with A'ja on the court than with her off the court, which kind of makes basketball sense if you think about it, because she's back there protecting the rim.
Yeah,
it's a lot harder to get into the paint, so you're going to settle for those threes. Now that the rim is a little bit more open, you're going to see more drives and more penetration, maybe more post-ups, things like that. So that's one thing that could only help this Paige under 1.5 threes. The reason we were getting a high line or good odds on this is because she went 5 for 7 in her first game back. But before that, this line would have been very, very, very juiced to the under. She had only cleared it one other time. So I think between that and then that one I might buy into because it makes basketball sense, although that wasn't true with Asia's on-off stats for the last 2 seasons, so it might just be noise this season. But I might buy into it. This other one I really feel like is probably just random, but again, on the off chance that it's not and it means anything, it only helps us. The other on-off is that Myisha Hines-Allen, when she is on the court, Paige shoots way more threes, her 3-point rate. And she does have a 100-plus minute sample now playing with Myisha and without Myisha. And her 3-point rate goes down a lot with Myisha Hines-Allen off the court. MHA is questionable for this one. So if that somehow actually means something and MHA doesn't play, that's only going to help this play as well. I wouldn't necessarily bet on that because I do think it's probably just noise. But again, even if you don't account for that, I'd have this at like minus 150. So if you get minus 135, I still think it's a decent look. And if you can find a book, like I said, that prices in the reverse correlation with this and the Wings team total over, I think it's a good look. Because Paige might have the ball in her hands a lot, but she, like I said, might be getting to the rim. So I probably wouldn't parlay those if they're not going to price that in for you. But use a parlay calculator and check what it should be, and then check, if the odds are a lot higher than that. And if so, maybe worth a sprinkle.
We love a reverse Corey here on WNBA Buckets, so definitely love that look. And I think it seems like this line is really inflated off of last game, and I don't think there's any reason to wait last game. It wasn't like anything really changed in the time she missed those few games. So love that look. Props wise, the Aces aren't out yet, but I want to talk through a potential thing because by the time you're listening to this, they probably will be out. Maybe I'll have posted something, but maybe you can get to this, bright and early and have yourself a day before the posts even come through and move some stuff. But Jackie and Chelsea are the two whose usage goes way up without A'ja. That makes perfect sense. We've seen that kind of for a couple seasons now. Jackie's really the one who, over the sample of this season and last, gets really, really notable usage bumps, like 14% with A'ja off. We saw that last game. She had an outstanding game. And again, this is, potentially looking to fade the Aces a little bit. But again, it's against Dallas. This is a very good defense to be going up against if you want to score. So if you're looking at both of those, I kind of think both will open not high enough, but probably Jackie in particular. And then one that's, kind of on the inverse of that, it might be a fun little zag. If you get to this later, I'm not sure if the market will be smart enough to sniff this out, or if we have a big enough sample, to be honest with you. But Jewell Loyd actually does, her usage drops notably. And I do think we've seen A'ja, improve a lot from her playmaking out of the post this year, and really kind of her assists are up, and Jewell's not doing a lot of creating of her own right now. Now, maybe this is the perfect opportunity for her to kind of get right. We've seen her kind of, at times at least score more when there are fewer options on the court. I don't hate a zag, especially if she starts to take some overs. Like if they hang her points prop too high, like if they adjust her up to 15 points, 14 and a half, something like that. I think I'd be looking at the under, which is like semi-terrifying against, again, a Dallas team that plays no defense, and there will be no A'ja. That's a lot of, usage opening up, but I'm pretty interested in Jewel Lloyd on a little reverse here. And then the only other thing, I don't even know if we'll get this prop, but Kia Stokes does hit the glass really hard with Asia out. This is not a team that does a lot of rebounding outside of Asia. Roto Grinders projections, we've got her at basically 10 rebounds for this game. Part of that is her minutes, should jump notably. She played 30 minutes last game. But her rebounding really pops with Asia off the court. So I don't know if we'll get that. If we do, it might be a great ladder opportunity. This game should be pretty fast paced. And even though we like Dallas, it's still, you're going to get some Enrique, missed shots and all that. So I think Kia rebounds is potentially a look if we even get that. So any thoughts on all those prop looks for the aces there, Kyle?
Yeah, I haven't seen Kia Stokes props at all this year. It's something that you and I always talk about, wanting the books to start giving us more of those fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh best player on the team props. Without Asia, maybe we see him. I like that look if we do. In terms of the Asia to Jewel thing, yeah, that's absolutely. I'm buying into that. Asia has 7 assists to Jewel Lloyd on threes this year specifically.
Oh, wow.
And which is tied for 9th in the league in most of the one in terms of like an assist combo for threes. And most of the ones above are either a point guard or like someone who's more the passer, or someone who's more of like a playmaker. You have some wings. You have like Alyssa Thomas, sort of a pseudo point guard. You have like Ryan Howard up there. Sloot to Ariel Atkins, Sabrina to Kennedy Burke. Most of them are like that. And then you have like Asia to Jewel Lloyd.
That's cool.
Right below that. So that has been a very frequent assist combo, particular for Jewel 3. So Jewel, you talked about her under points, but Jewel 3's under might be a look as well, depending on what price they give us.
I love that. I think I'm definitely in that. You pull that up from her hoop stats. That's a great little tool for folks out there looking for stuff like that. All right, let's talk about this first game. We have much less. I don't think you even have a best bet on this game, but let's at least touch on it. I was hoping that this number would last. I really like the Atlanta side at like 8.5. It's up to 12. I probably honestly still lean that direction. Really high on this Atlanta team in general, and this Chicago team is rough, man. The total has also gone under. My best bet has gone from like a hammer to a lean, I think. Chicago team total. Basically doing the inverse of you with Dallas. I'm doing the Chicago team total under. Should be able to get like 72.5. It's starting to get into that range. I take it a little bit past that. Probably take it to around 70.5. But honestly, this is going to be a play as long as they give it to us in the 70s and it's a decent defense. Atlanta's a top 5 defense, and maybe even more importantly, they have the highest defensive rebounding rate this season, which is obviously pretty important in a game against Angel Reese and Camila Cardosa. If you could like draw up a front court to slow them down, I think Brittany Griner and Brianna Jones are kind of the perfect combination. On that note, Brittany Griner's kind of been having her minutes. There's a couple of games where she's been around 15 minutes. I think she will get a pretty good run tomorrow. And I actually I'm debating a rebound prop for Griner as well. That's not an official best bet. But that number has come down a little bit because of her minutes in recent games. But ironically, she's been rebounding the ball well when she's been in there this season. So without Sloot, this Chicago defense just looks pretty lost. They scored 66 last game against the Liberty. That didn't look like a super sustainable 66. It kind of looked like, the Liberty got out to an insane early lead and then, throttled it down a gear and were content to just, keep them at arm's length. The first game, they scored 52 without her against the Fever. They're getting a run of honestly really tough defenses. So maybe when they play a team like a Dallas or a Vegas, we can zag if the market overcorrects. Since we're always, there's no blind bet. It's just whatever the market gives us number wise. But I think at 72.5, I still lean towards the under here on Chicago. Did you have any thoughts on this game, either, side total or prop wise?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, a couple of things that I liked are already out of range at this point, but mostly I'm just with you that the Chicago offense is if Dallas is Alice, then this is Chicago. They just there's no O on this team. You
debuted that the other day, and I was like, damn, that's really good, and like really fortunate that somehow Chicago had an O in it and Dallas has a D in it.
It really worked out perfectly to make that joke, and especially without Sloot now, the offense just looks lost. And obviously, a lot of the source of offense, like you said, is just putting the ball at the rim and letting one of those skyscrapers go get it. And they're probably not going to do that against this Dream front court. So it's a really tough matchup for them as well. And Atlanta also, we talk about Smesco and how Maury ball they play on offense, but he applies that same philosophy kind of in inverse on defense, taking away threes as well. So you think like their front court is dominant, they're going to take away those rebounds. Maybe they are soft on the perimeter. Not at all. They really take away the perimeter as well. Not that Chicago has a plethora of shooters, but it's going to be hard for the few that they do have, like an Atkins or a Rachel Banham, to really get free as well. So just a lot of things working against them.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do, for our Friday guests, we've been doing these same game parlay scripts. I don't think you've come on during the season, so I don't think we've done one of these yet, but let's walk through, and you and I agreed before, with the same game parlays, because you have way more offerings on the overs and the unders. Typically, you want to look at a game that you're eyeing the over more than the under. So that's going to be obviously the Vegas Dallas game here. Do you want to kind of lay out the bones of one? David, our producer, is always good at kind of, behind the scenes, shopping it and figuring out where's best. So let's kind of talk it out, and then we'll shout out the number at some point when we get the best number on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you either got to put the Wings team total, or probably better, are we trying to go like pretty big long shot, Jimmy long shot style here?
Maybe we do. We've been trying to keep it in I think the 600 to 700 range. More
okay, so maybe we get Wings money line in there instead of Wings spread. Ooh. The Aces, like you said, did just lose to the Valkyries by 1 million and lost to the Sparks. Gave up 95 plus in both of those. So they very easily could lose this game. Wings are 1 and whatever.
Yeah,
and
need a win.
Last in the league, desperate for a win.
Dejanay Carrington's getting taunted by ex-teammates all around the league right now.
Yeah, she's gonna want it. So might as well throw the money line in there, and then the full game over. I'm not sure what that gets us to. We could put my Paige under prop in there if we can find a book. If David's back there shopping around, finding a book that prices that in as reverse correlation.
Those three might get us in that range. Can I, even though Jimmy Longshot's here, can we do the spread? Because this game is screaming to me, Dallas covers and doesn't win, and they go to 111. Because I do think the veterans of Vegas, although they've lost a bunch, but because I think if we do the spread, the over, the Paige under, and we get one other prop, although I guess we don't have the Aces ones out there, so that might be tricky. But I think those three plus one of those, maybe Jackie 15 plus, even or even Jackie, maybe Jackie 20 plus, maybe that's where we get aggressive. I think that's the bones of a pretty nice same game parlay. What do you think?
Yeah, let's go with it. I'm in.
Okay. In fact, I realized, as I said, that we don't have the Aces prop. So for right now, let's do Wings money line, the game over, and the Paige under 1.53s.
And that's kind of why I was thinking money line, because we don't have Aces props. So if we want to get it to 600, 700, we might have to get the money line.
Yeah, maybe once we get those Aces props, we can post it in the app tomorrow with the maybe downshift a tiny bit to the spread, but add a Jackie 15 plus or a Jackie 20 plus. Is there any other Aces props? Did you like the Jackie points the most? What do you like the most for the Aces?
Yeah, I think probably. I mean, it always depends on what line we get, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, if we did get that Kia Stokes rebounds prop, I would
that might be really
fun. Just because if we get to bet on Kia Stokes, how can we not take advantage?
Kia Stokes are one of our favorite players here.
Give us a threes line, 0.5.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so with that in mind, that's kind of the first section of the show. We always like to have a little fun in the second half. This one is more fun than super actionable, but I think it's going to be kind of fun. So basically, what I said to Calvin is, let's go through the league. Let's each rank the 13 teams, 13 to 1, in terms of, I called it the who burns you meter. What team out there can you not figure out? And I didn't say it had to be just this season. You can look at seasons past to a degree. You can look at individual players on the team. You look at, on my side of things, who's hard to project, whose minutes are all over the place and really annoying. So just kind of what teams do you love engaging with in the betting world and which teams do you hate? So Calvin and I are going to kind of walk through the league and talk through the teams that we'll start with the teams that kind of get our goat and kind of burn us the most. And then we'll end with the teams that we love the most. I thought this was funny, Calvin, because I can see your ranks in here. I read through some of your notes earlier, was chuckling. we kind of align. I would say definitely directionally. I think we have the same top three, even maybe. And then some of the similar teams at the bottom. That's not super shocking. The Bet She Wins crew, me and Danny are basically cooking up, bets all together all the time. So it kind of isn't super shocking, but I think it will be fun to kind of highlight the spots where we don't fully overlap. So yeah, did you, before we get into the rankings, did you have any thoughts on when you were going through this?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, like, this is one of those things we're just having fun, and like, you're splitting hairs with a lot of these. Like, do I really know what's the difference between like my 8th least favorite team to bet on and my 9th favorite? Like, not really. It's just like, when I was going through this, it was like, there's ones that are like definitely the best, ones that are definitely the worst, and then ones that are in the middle. And then I just kind of, within those 3 tiers, just kind of split them out, So don't take this too seriously. We're just trying to have a good time. But this was a really good idea on your part, and I'm looking forward to getting into it.
And I think there's some action to be had, and like if you see one of us post something on one of these teams that we really like, then maybe have a little bit more confidence. If it's one that we're a little sketchy on, be like,
big fade.
Did you guys think? Did you guys you're going back to the well? You're gonna get burned? Maybe turn it down a little bit. So, and real quick here, David already shopped the same game parlay, and this is actually pretty impressive. I think because of the reverse correlation, you can get Dallas spread, so Dallas +5, the over 168.5, Paige under 1.5 threes. You're +556 just on that at FanDuel. So I love that. I think we definitely start there, and then we can add like a Jackie 15 or 20 and get us to maybe even close to like 10-1. So I'm definitely gonna be rocking that tomorrow.
I think we're cooking. Let's do it. I'm gonna be hitting that as well.
Love it. Okay, so and thank you to David for doing that as always. Dave is the best on that. All right, let's start with your 13th ranked team, the team that just really you struggle to fully figure out. Who is your 13?
Yeah, I got to go with the new team, with the Golden State Valkyries, and they got a lot of time to turn this around still. They have a very small sample of franchise history, but in their franchise history, I've pretty much exclusively been wrong about them. That win total under that we both went big on is looking dicey at best right now. Yeah. We'll see how things go without some of those players who went to Eurobasket and with their schedule really turning in a few weeks. But minutes wise, in terms of props, very hard to project. Natalie has kind of been going with hot hand, going with different players, and now it's only going to even get harder with some of these players gone. Who's going to be playing 30 minutes or 20 minutes? And that bet that I had with you on this pod, almost certainly going to lose it at this point with Valkyries versus Connecticut Sun win total spread. I think Valkyries are going to cash the spread and the money line on that one going away. So I've just done all sorts of losing on this team, and it's only been a month of their existence, but in that month it hasn't gone well.
So I had them 11th. A lot of the same reasons. That regular season win total that I literally named our fantasy league after, the 15.5 Valkyrie regular season win total. Honestly, they might go over now. And then they're kind of getting me back because I just logged the over the other day, and I've had some people message me about that, about like kind of the timing with as folks are going off to Eurobasket as the schedule gets tougher. And I think, and people were kind of understanding of how I talked through it on the podcast, of like a chunk of that was the like, this is now my second favorite team. I have adopted these Valkyries as like, I love the squad. I just don't want to root against them anymore. I think I even said that in the note. Now I've got like a 3-win middle. I still think even with the players going off to Euro and the tougher schedule, they might land right in that kind of 12 to 15 range. I really don't hate that middle in general, but definitely was wrong about, how long it was going to take them to adjust. And like you said, there's a lot of like the player props have been tough in part because the minutes have been tough. The rotations, Natalie is doing exactly what you would want from a first year coach at an expansion team and just playing around with everything. But that just makes it difficult to bet at times. So I had them 11th. The only thing kind of flowing them a little bit is, I did get that. I did get your ass on the Sun. Now you got my ass back later. We'll talk about that as on another one. But yeah, I had them 11th. So we definitely both had them. I did tiers, and they were in my lowest tier. And your next team is also in my lowest tier. So who's your 12th ranked team? This is also my 12th ranked team.
Yeah, the LA Sparks for me, and some of this goes back to Kurt Miller, who I think is a great coach, and I like him, but he had some tough rotations to figure out as well. So a lot of this was probably more on the player props side than maybe on like the spreads or totals side, but they've also kind of been hard to figure out for me this year, I think. On one hand, like I still think it's pretty clearly the most talented team among the like 8 through 13 tier. If you want to kind of split it up, because I think we all think there's a gap from like 7 to 8, and they should get that playoff spot. But on the other hand, they've looked very shaky at times, like against the Valkyries, who maybe that was just because the Valkyries are good, but then they turn around and beat the Aces, right? So it's just a really tough team for me to get a read on, I think. And you have some Kelsey Plum games where she scores 13, some where she scores 30.
Yep.
Sometimes it looks like she's going to go, Lynn Roberts is going to go full Tibbs and play everyone 40 minutes. And then sometimes she brings in Emma Cannon for 20 minutes. So it's just really tough to figure out.
Yeah, I had a lot of the same notes here. The minutes kind of being all over the place. I feel like I keep picking the wrong Plum and Hamby games this season too. Like I feel like I was on some Plum escalators. They missed. Then I sat it out, and then she went massive, and I played again. Then she missed. So definitely some of that. And yeah, I keep being interested in this team, and I'm wondering if they're going to keep burning me. I'm probably not going to go back to the well too much, but I talked about this with Dano on the pod on Monday. If they get Brink back and Rakia back and they settle in, like this is going to be a team that I'm going to be pretty interested in. Now, again, remember, this is my 12th place team on this list for a reason. So, tread cautiously, but I really do like the fit of their kind of big three, if you will, with Plum, Rakia. I can't even leave Hamby out. It's really a 4 with Hamby and Brink. That's a lot of depth of talent. So, yeah, they were just pretty low on my list in general. Why don't you go up to your number 11, who is my number 10? Again, we're very similar in terms of these for the most part.
Yeah, I'm going with Atlanta, and honestly, for how low I have them, I actually have kind of always liked them player props wise, especially this year. Like I know the Bet She Wins Discord has always kind of
Tina.
Ryan Howard has been their Achilles heel, maybe, if you want to say, but every time they bring that up, I feel like everyone's forgetting how often we cashed her 3-point attempts over last year after the Olympics when Prize Picks was giving those. She made us a lot of money on those. We didn't even need them to go in. So I do have to give credit where credit is due there. But just in terms of like the spread in the total on them, it's almost like the opposite of LA for me. LA is more like props. Atlanta is more spread in total, going back to way before Smesco, all of the Tanisha Wright era. I just have never been able to get a feel. It's one of those teams that will go on the road and beat the best team in the league and then turn around and lay a huge egg at home against like a team with a winning percentage in the 100s. So yeah, they just are really tough to get a read on.
Yeah, I would say that of the past 2 seasons, if we did this, even 6 months ago, Atlanta probably would have been the bottom team. They've kind of been the team I've joked about just getting me over and over and over and over again. But I moved them out of the most hated tier. They're at the bottom of the next tier. They are my 10th ranked team. But I feel pretty good about this season. Now, famous last words, maybe this is all part of their long con to really, really burn me in the end. But I mean, Smesco Coach of the Year is looking awesome. Ryan Howard to lead the league in threes is like at least alive. She's leading the league in attempts. There's a lot to like here, and I feel like have read the Jordan Candace stuff pretty well when she went out in terms of Alicia Gray, in terms of playmaking. Danny hit a nice like kind of zag Ryan Howard assist over the other day as well. Even with Kanda back, because that offensive system is just kind of it's got so much motion that there's a lot of assists to go around. So yeah, Atlanta, I moved up to 10th. And what I'm going to do here is that's mostly our bottom tier. There's one team that you actually have 5th on yours, but is my dead last. So I want to do them, get your quick thoughts, and then we'll kind of move up the tier. I feel like that was kind of this will be our combined bottom tier. But for me, Dallas was literally last in my rankings. They have burned me so many times. I'm always so interested in them. I always play them to make the playoffs. I think I bet them to win the title at a like insanely long number midway through last season, because I just keep I keep getting interested. That was when Satu was coming back, I was like, all right, I'm interested. Nope, it didn't matter at all. They have such talent and skill there, and then there's just something at the core that it keeps dragging me in. I will say I have here in my notes that we'll always have that post Commissioner's Cup Minnesota Lynx money line. I think I went against you and Danny. I think you had posted this or something. This is the only good win I've ever had with the Dallas Wings. So it's memorable because it's the only win I've ever had with Dallas.
You've had two. You're forgetting one.
Oh, am I really? Wait,
the opening day Tierra McCowan unders.
Oh yes. Okay, Dallas. You're maybe you're 12.5 because those were really nice. Those McCowan debut this season unders were a complete smack. So that's a good call. Why don't you talk about Dallas? You had them fifth on yours.
Yeah, they're kind of borderline for me on like my middle tier and like my upper tier because Enrique always burns me. Anytime I bet on her, she would be like, if it were just her, like dead last on this list. And I mean, I love her. She's so fun, but all of her fun games are when I bet her unders, and then she turns around and scores 8. So outside of Enrique, though, I feel like I've actually read everything else about this team fairly well in the last few years. I think like the Alice fades. I mean, the only reason this team maybe isn't even higher is because I haven't trusted those enough, but I have pretty consistently been on their overs for the last couple years. I don't remember hitting a Dallas under last year or this year. Last year they had the second worst defense all time, and I was hitting overs all over the place on the full game. And then player prop wise, I mean, outside of Enrique, I think like I've had your read on McCowan was amazing. I think last year or two, I've had a couple where like McCowan would randomly get benched by LT, just like once or twice a year for no particular reason. Probably she just slacked off in practice or something the day before. And then like everyone would slam her unders when that news would come out like half an hour before the game. And then I would turn around and hit her overs because she would come off the bench and like be really angry and go for 15 and 12 and still play like significant minutes.
Well, shout out Lefko because Lefko had the T-Mac home away stuff that we hit as well. So maybe Dallas needs to go 12 and the Sparks can be sitting that 13th spot for me. Because the more we talk about it, I'm like, you know what? There were some decent things over the years with Dallas.
Yeah, there's been some wins for sure. You gotta give them credit for some of those wins.
All right, we'll actually we'll bump them out of the bottom tier. They're no longer in the bottom tier.
I will say though, if they want to earn their way out of the bottom tier, they need to cash for us.
Yes,
tomorrow or tonight when you're listening to this.
This is the point of whether they're in this incredibly important bottom tier of teams that have burned us or not. Let's go.
I'm moving them way down if they don't score 80 against the Aces.
Let's go with the team that I think I have at 9 and you have at 10. Or we're at 10 for you, I believe, and I think they're 9 for me. So again, around the same spot, kind of like a little bit lower half. And another team that we are the other team in that game, the Aces.
Yeah, the Aces for me, I think the biggest reason why they're kind of below the middle line for me, below average, is that I've been too slow to kind of buy into their whole fall from dynasty level. They won 2 championships in a row and were very clearly the favorite to win a third one. And then still were sort of a championship contender in that third year, but not the best team. Obviously lost in the semis. And then this year, that decline has only continued, at least so far. And I'm pretty much fully buying into it at this point. And the crazy thing is that the market somehow seems to be like even slower than me to react to this. But I think I probably could have made a lot more money on them if I were willing to bet on them not being a top tier championship contender sooner than I was. So of course, again, we're going to find out. Their position might change if they all of a sudden come out and look amazing and win by 20 and their defense dominates in this next game, because this is like right when I finally decided like, okay, they're bad. I'm going to start fading them. Like it took me like way too long to buy into this. Now I am. So of course, now is the time when they turn it around. But
They'll go full Ewing theory without Asia. The defense will be incredible. Yeah,
that seems to be a thing. So we'll see.
Ironically,
But
yeah,
that's
my
where I'm at.
reason, yeah, ironically, my reason's almost the opposite. I like kind of was on them being bad before. Like the big thing in 2023, Marie and I both were on the Liberty to beat the Aces in the finals, and they got there and they got the chance. Chelsea got hurt, and it didn't matter. The Aces still got me, which I think that alone has them kind of below the midpoint, because that was a big take equity, and actual equity was the Liberty at the number they were at to beat the Aces. Now last year was also on the Liberty again, but was a little bit spooked because of the previous year, seeing that like the very clear like mental edge that the Aces had. And I thought I should have like powered through that and probably been even more on the Liberty, who dispatched the Aces in the second or in the semifinals. So my big picture, I feel like kind of struggles with them. I think day to day though, like, I mean, got the Asia MVP last year. Chelsea and Jackie, I feel like have pretty good reads on points. Now, having said that, probably be wrong on that tomorrow, but I feel like Jackie in particular, I feel like I am able to get a pretty good feel for when she's gonna do well or when she's gonna struggle. So we're at the point where we're getting kind of to those teams that we're kind of split on. So it kind of makes sense that there's some good and some bad here with the Aces. Your next team is your kind of I have no thoughts on them team. So they're kind of in the middle of your rankings. They're kind of high for me. They're my number 4 team. So do you have any quick thoughts, or do you want to just set the table and I can talk through why I have been liking betting them?
Yeah, the Sky are right in the middle for me, just in terms of like, I don't really feel like they've gotten me too much, but I don't feel like I've had some like amazing reads on them either. So just kind of, whatever. I think you should probably take this one because I don't have too many thoughts on them, to be honest.
Yeah, I have them 4th on mine. I feel like these team total unders, first when Kennedy Carter went out last year and then when Sloot went out this year, have been like semi-wagons. Now, again, we're talking about a lot of stuff right before we bet it this episode and probably jinx it. So we'll see how that all turns out. But I feel like I've been skeptical of them big picture. Like regular season win total, like that feels like a cash already. Like I without Sloot, I don't want to be like, dancing on the grave here, but they just seem like they're in a lot of trouble. They had a pretty high win total on open this year, and I did like that under. So that's a team that I just feel like it's maybe more than like getting a ton right. I just feel like I haven't gotten a lot of wrong reads on this. I feel like Kennedy Carter under 3s were big for us last year as well. And just some point stuff here and there. So I feel like a lot of W's for Chicago. So I had them 4th. But definitely behind a couple teams that we'll still talk through. So we're moving up the ranks. We're now to your number 8. So this is kind of, again, middle of the pack for you. This is a team that I have right behind Chicago for me 5th. So both like kind of maybe slightly above average for me, slightly below average for you. But talk to me about the Fever.
Yeah, the Fever have kind of been a roller coaster for me. I think like last year we came into the year wanting to fade them and fade Caitlin Clark because everyone was way too high on them, and that worked out great for a month. They would have been, if we had this pod a month into last year, they would have been pretty high for me. And then after that, I probably was too slow to buy into their turnaround that just seemed to happen like in an instant. Like they had 5 days off from the brutal schedule and then came back, and all of a sudden we're beating everybody, and Caitlin Clark was doubling her assist average and all of this, and I did not buy into that quick enough. So they've gotten me in that regard. I think this year I had a pretty good read on them in terms of defense. They're second behind only New York this year in defensive rating. And that was the one where I made up for our son Valkyrie's bet with our over under 6.5 defensive rating rank. I don't want to jinx it, but I feel pretty good about them finishing in the top 6.
Feels really good right now.
So we'll see when Caitlin's back. But I also have had a tough time getting a read on them, especially player props wise. I think without Caitlin, some of that might just be random luck. But I was on K Mitch overs, and she didn't hit the over until the 3rd game without Caitlin. Leah Boston hit 1 under, and then she went over the next game. So just some stretches where the reads have been really tough, and some stretches where I think the reads have been really good. So ended up being in the middle.
I think it's funny that I have them 5th because I feel like you definitely got me on this defense one, which I had listed here as like the negative for me. But I thought that we had, I could be, maybe this is my, memory that failing me, because I thought that kind of from the start of the season, it was the schedule spot is brutal for Caitlin and the Fever to start the season, especially with her coming off of, long college season. But I thought we were kind of anticipating that turnaround, and we're kind of able to hit. If I remember correctly, now this is where my memory is semi shit sometimes, but I thought that we had logged a win total right around that turning point, and we're able to get it like coming in going with like the under to start the season, and then the over right before that schedule spot flipped. And I thought that was one of the best reads that we'd had, so that's why I had them pretty high on the list.
Well, I think when you say we, I think it was actually you, and that's why.
Okay, well that would explain why
I think like you tried to talk to me about that at that time, and I was like, "No, they've just sucked so bad. Like they'll figure it out eventually. But it's not going to be like right now. Like they still suck." And then literally just like in the next day, they all of a sudden like it was not gradual at all. They just became and like a week or two into that stretch where they turned it around, when I was finally like, all right, they turned it around, they might be good. But I was like too late at that point. Everything, had already had like the markets have caught up. So I should have just listened to you is what it was.
I wasn't trying to dunk on you, I promise. I was just
I know.
I had them higher. So we have chatted a lot. So let's go a little quicker on some of these. So the next one is your sixth, and that's the Seattle Storm. I have them, I think, like 6th or 7th as well. So kind of middle. So we don't have to spend a ton of time here. But it's kind of a fun team to talk to. You want to kind of do quick thoughts on these final few teams?
Yeah, I mean, Seattle for me is sort of in that middle territory right now of like, they've been kind of okay, nothing amazing, nothing terrible. But I think they have a lot of opportunities to move into the top tier for me, because we have a bet on them to make the Commissioner's Cup. We have a bet on Gabby Williams to win the Commissioner's Cup MVP at plus 10,000. They're in the driver's seat to make it out of the West now after beating the Lynx. We have their win total over this year. We have them to make the playoffs this year. A lot of things that are currently in good shape that we may be jinxing on this pod. But if they do end up coming to fruition, that'll be a whole lot of cashes for them with Commissioner's Cup stuff in the next few weeks, and then some of the longer term futures in September. And at that point, I would bump them way up my rankings.
Yeah, and I had them kind of middle as well, because I feel like this is a team I like super stubbornly back. The last 2 years, I've been really kind of all in on them. And it hasn't been that they've been bad and burned me on them. They just haven't quite lived up to the hype. But I do think that there's a lot of potential here. And this is one that like literally could join like this top tier with 2 other teams right now. But it's more just kind of a weird vibe betting them. Like I feel like they have weird letdown spots, especially early in the season. They had some spots here and there. And, like, again, they got to the playoffs last year, but they lost in the first round. So what did my like title ticket? Didn't like pay out at all. I couldn't leverage it at all. So they're solid in the middle, and then with a lot of room on the top. Let's go up to the next one, who I have no thoughts on, but this was my no clue where to put them. So just slot them in the middle. Phoenix, you had them in 6th, though. Again, semi-middle for you, but just kind of brief thoughts there.
Yeah, they're kind of on the upper end of my middle tier at 6th, because like they would have been basically where they are for you coming into this year for me. But I do feel like I have kind of been higher on the role players that they brought in this year, everyone outside of the big 3 than the market has. I think the market has seen all of those players who a lot of fans hadn't heard of until this year, all these 27-year-old rookies, and kind of written them off. And they've actually covered a lot of spreads and been playing pretty well. And I watched that first game, and part of this too, I think, was maybe a little bit of emotional. Like we both were on the Storm in that first game and got extreme closing line value with the Storm at plus money line. They closed at like -7, and then Phoenix just ran them out of the gym. I was very tuned into that game, and obviously bummed about losing that bet. But at the same time, from a basketball perspective, was like, wow, these players can actually hoop. Lexi Held, pretty good. Monique Akoa-Makani, pretty good. Catherine Westfeld, pretty good for role players. And so in addition to that, like been on some Satu overs because of the usage and things like that. So I think this year they're pretty high for me, but they're kind of coming out of that middle tier. It's only been a month, so I'm still putting them at the top of the middle tier just in terms of historically.
Yeah, I love that. The next team we both have you have them 4th. I have them either 5th or 6th here. Just the spunky team that, before the Valkyries are probably kind of my second favorite, like kind of adopted team, Washington Mystics. I'll quickly go on my side of things. So again, I feel like we shout them out every episode. Andrew O'Connor watched with those first half full game plays for Washington were just printing money. Sykes points, I felt like that was a banger to start the season here. I feel like you get a good read on them because they're just like a great team to cover against, good teams and like hang around and win that first half and then kind of fade down the stretch. And he did it last year and again this year. And like they have a crowded front court, but I feel like, projecting it is I kind of, pretty attuned to who's going to be losing and gaining minutes. So I love this Washington team. I love betting them, and I think they're a fun team in general.
Yeah, I definitely think they're a very fun team too from a basketball perspective. I think from a betting perspective, like I don't really have a lot of negatives on them, and like other than what you mentioned, the one positive that I have to throw back to is I believe it was 2022. The OG followers will probably remember the second quarter unders just like printed for basically 2/3 of the season. It didn't matter who they were playing or where. Those were just like automatic, and they kept getting lower and lower for some reason, specifically the second quarter. It wasn't even like the first quarter, first half, third quarter, but it was, I want to say it was an 18 in a row streak or something like that. It was unreal, and so that alone puts them like on the low end of my top tier.
I absolutely love that. That's like a vague memory, honestly. I feel like that's probably around the time we had started like betting together. So
Yeah,
I
I think
wonder if
so.
I even was part of that. So that's great. Now we have the same top three. Two of them are the two best teams in league. The third is probably the worst team in league. You and I both have Connecticut third on the list. Of course, it's a much different team this year. So like this year versus last year, how did you weight it and how'd they end up third for you?
Yeah, I think Connecticut is like the opposite of Phoenix for me, where Phoenix was kind of like, meh, and then this year has been pretty good, so kind of moving up. Connecticut this year is kind of meh, but they're weighted pretty heavily in my rankings by like historically
Yeah.
Steph White era and Kurt Miller era of just under both of those coaches, like very slow, grindy, defensive, so many unders, and especially going back to 21 or 22 when I was kind of first getting into WNBA betting. They were playing games in the 140s like every time
Yeah.
out, and the lines couldn't be low enough. They were in the mid 150s down to the lower 150s, and it didn't matter. They were cashing unders all over the place, and that's buoying them here in my rankings.
I love that. Yeah, this also weights towards previous seasons. Although I will say, even this season, I feel like pretty good read on them. I'd say that's the win total that's in probably the best shape of any of the regular season win totals right now. Again, I got your ass on the Valkyries being better than them, and then ignored that you got my ass on Fever defense. But I like the biggest miss was probably on the floor last season. I bet I don't think I actually went through with the bet, but talked about betting them to miss the playoffs with Owen over there, and that wouldn't even come close to hitting. Not even directionally correct. But the win totals each year have basically been hitting those win totals, including a couple years ago with that escalator. It was one of my first kind of big hits I wrote up for action was them to win, I think 25 plus games at like plus 500. So that was good. And yeah, I feel like there's not a lot of negatives and a fair amount of positives. So, but let's go into the final two teams. We want to be able to highlight these two. We have the same two in the same order. We both have Minnesota second, New York first. That's how it is in the standings this year, and ironically, that's how it has been betting them as well. So why do you have Minnesota second and New York first?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that Minnesota's the second best team, New York's the best, and that's where we have them in both of our rankings too.
Yeah.
We've both cashed a lot of their spreads and different ways of betting them to be successful over the last year and a half, and they have been. And with Minnesota, you can go back to the win total over last year. Shout out Danny Barlavi. That was so low, 14.5. I want to say it opened. They cleared that by like now, like this time of year already. And then Bridget in the Commissioner's Cup may or may not have been robbed of the MVP, but still cashed.
They might have been number
leader.
one if she had won that Commissioner's Cup MVP.
Yeah, and I think Nafisa Collier would still say that Bridget deserved to win it too. But we still got some cash with her threes leader. Shout out to you on that one. And then with New York, obviously they're just a wagon, just a juggernaut. But specifically, some of the first quarter stuff that we like to hit on them just is the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah,
I think, and over the last few years that has really carried us betting wise. So have to put them first.
Yeah, I had a lot of the same stuff. Breakout team from last year, especially Danny was really all over that win total. But also MVP this season looking really good. That was kind of the consensus. Like if you listen to that Buckets preview episode, I think every single person who came on gave MVP out as a bet, and hopefully you listened because it's looking good right now. Bridget Carlton threes in the Commissioner's Cup you mentioned. So and then when it comes to New York, I mean, hitting on the title last year. Now again, they did burn me the year before that, but I mean the Jonquel Commissioner's Cup MVP, the Jonquel Finals MVP. If we'd hit the Febitch Most Improved Player of the Year, which was probably my favorite bet from before a season, and looks like it's really not going to hit, they probably would have been locked into this number one spot for the decade. But there were a lot of good long shot wins for New York that definitely made it kind of an easy choice, along with kind of all the day-to-day stuff. Probably doesn't hurt that, I am a Liberty fan, and you know your own team's best. You can kind of see the writing on the wall, rotations well, probably have connections you can talk to. Shout out Miles and his incredible insights on the Liberty. So we had kind of a similar ranking there. I hope people found that useful. It's definitely fun. And I do think there's like something to be said for kind of knowing, the people who, you're listening to, what teams they feel comfortable with, which teams kind of are like, I can't figure these guys out. So did you enjoy that homework assignment I gave you, Calvin?
I did. Yeah, that was a fun little assignment. We were kind of going back and forth on what would be fun to talk about in this last segment of the pod. I think you hit it out of the park with that idea. So
hopefully,
great work.
Fingers crossed. And I would love for people to reach out. Either in the DM, I love when people do that, but also just when I tweet out the episode, would love to hear what people have. Do they have a team that they love betting on, they hate betting on? Matt Mitchell, if you make it to this point in the episode, I'd be very curious to your thoughts. I feel like you will have big thoughts on that as well. So
yeah, I love how the Action app, since we're on the Action Pod, we should shout out how the Action app does that thing like Spotify, at the end of the year. Yeah. So maybe get back to us in 6 months and let us know what the app says, like who you won the most money on and who you lost the most money on.
Yes, I absolutely love that.
That'll tie right into this.
Atlanta was definitely a team I lost the most on last year. I remember it was very fitting. All right. So with that in mind, download the Action Network app. If you haven't, you can get that year in review. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're listening to a podcast, rate and review would be awesome. Thanks to David Payne, as always, getting the SGP and doing all the wizardry behind the scenes on the audio. Gifford Gould on the YouTube side of things. If you like to tail any of the bets we talked about today, you can go look for the quick slip link in the episode description. And otherwise, Calvin, thanks again for coming on. It was a blast chatting.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And let's get buckets.